Less than 30 seconds now in regulation. Could this take extra time? 16 seconds. Here's Dyal. Send it up at the point, J. Lalu. Call midget now, but Matt, 6 seconds, 5, Dow fan coming out. He gets around in 2 seconds. He's got to do it quick. Shoot, the scores, 1 second left.
What an amazing game cast by our man Winters with a 1.
Who is going to continue casting for season 20 here?
Which,
I talked yesterday about it.
I mean, well, depending on if we do Fridays, is that part of
Yeah.
it?
He might be able to do Tuesday.
Okay.
I'm not 100%, but I gave him the choice, and he said Friday's better, or Friday's always good. So I said perfect.
All right.
And
Seems
it
fair
looks
to
like
me.
Friday is, what we're gonna keep based on these signups we're getting.
So Friday is a for sure day. It's just a matter of whether or
Should be.
not Tuesday is as well.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Tuesday looking likely. Sunday is just so popular with the fellas,
Yeah, Friday, Sunday would be an interesting
and it'd be a little rough.
situation, but because you're stacking the games so much next to each other, which I'm not a huge fan of. But if they're the best days for attendance, I feel like that's the most important thing we need to be pushing for. So
Yeah, we'll see. Probably Tuesday, Friday.
anyway, okay. So that's beside the point. But yeah, if for some reason you didn't know already at the time of seeing this, when this is inevitably released, there
It'd probably
is
be
plans.
drafted by that time.
Yeah, there is plans for a season 20. Much to my disappointment.
Yeah, I think you made the post, but whatever.
Well, you asked me to make the post. It wasn't
No,
really
I
wasn't
know.
really like a choice thing on my end, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe we'll see.
Anyway, okay. So for this installment of the Face-Off, for those of you looking at the screen, we're going to be doing something a little bit different than what we have done previous sort of discussion topics, really. This one's a little more, I don't want to say out of left field, but we are going back to each LHL season, and we're going to be going through and doing first team all-stars for each of those individual seasons, trying to base them as best we can off of what positions people played. So we're going to try to pick the first team all-star winger, center, left defense, right defense, or just general defenseman when it comes to 4v4, and goalie. And the big reason why we're doing this is, for those who remember, we used to have sort of like, the fan vote all stars type thing, right? Where we'd have community votes for that to determine who were going to be the players playing in the all star game. But that, doesn't always carry quite the same weight. And there's obviously a lot of bias in terms of like, whether or not you enjoy a particular person is definitely going to influence whether or not you're willing to vote for them for things like that. And the All Star games themselves typically were underwhelming, to say the least, more often than not.
That's why we stopped
So,
doing them.
yes, after I think it was season 13, 12 or 13,
I
that,
played in 2 of them, and then I was like, okay,
yeah,
there's enough of
so,
this. So either 13 or 14 is when it stopped.
yep, we hit a point where we were like, okay, you know what, this is not really worth it anymore. So we stopped doing it, and in place of that, we never really did anything. I don't think we even started naming more all stars, right? We didn't even like
Nope.
name teams and not play the game. We just kind of stopped outright.
Yeah, we talked about naming teams and doing exactly what we're gonna do here, but we never did anything about it.
I thought
Just
unofficially
sort of
we
went
we
away.
kind of had, maybe it was just you and I had some discussions about who would be the all stars for this season. Because in
Maybe.
in a lot of cases, you could tell who the top forwards are that are going to make the All Star game type thing, right? So, um, but anyway, this is a little bit different for those who aren't familiar with hockey. They do this in football as well. I assume they do it in other sports too, but typically you have a
NBA, yeah.
And
All
I
NBA.
think it's usually voted by the Associated Press, right? Not by the players, to
In
determine
hockey, yeah.
who is. I think it's the same way in football too. It's like the sports writers and whatnot that vote on it. It's not like players themselves or anything. But anyway, the league itself will announce a first and second team All Star, which just says for the purpose of hockey, since we use that as an example, they'll take the in quotes best left winger, best center, best right winger, best left defenseman, right defenseman, and goalie, and name them all together as the first team All Stars. Then they will do the second best in each of those respective positions and announce a second team All Stars. They usually also, at least in the NHL, do an all rookie team, which would be a lot of fun to do if there were enough rookies to do that. Um, that's probably an exercise that would be actually a lot more interesting to do from an RSL perspective and not from an LHL one, but that's fine. There were some
Yeah, rookies in
seasons
LHL
where
always just trickle in and play a handful of
hmm
games here and there.
hmm it was rare that rookie of the season actually went to somebody who was like
A
either
rookie.
either a rookie or somebody who was like really excelling, in their rookie year, right? A lot of the times it went to people that were, they played some games as a rookie and did decently, but they're one of two choices, so they got it. So it wasn't always the most prestigious award, but some of the people who won it were definitely deserving. Anyway,
Mhm.
so we'd like to do a all rookie team, but that one really doesn't work. And given the fact that there are only 30 starters across the board in any particular season, with the exception of the two 8-team seasons where there were 32 starters, given that it feels a little disingenuous to do a second team all star as well, as you're basically covering like freaking half the league at that point,
Mhm.
or a third of it. So with that said, we're going to stick to just first team All Stars. We might have to make some assumptions with what positions people are playing, but I think we have a pretty good grasp on it for the most part. So if we get it wrong, particularly in the defenseman as well, if we get your side wrong for a specific season, I don't feel bad and I don't care.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
congratulations. Okay, so with that said, let's get to it.
Mhm. Let's wind
So
back the clock.
yeah, we're gonna start at I think season one, right? Is what we said. We'll
Mhm.
start at the beginning. So something that you have a wealth of knowledge about, I am well
Yeah.
aware.
Yeah, yeah. Season one, which was when was season one? What what year was it even?
2013, I believe. It was the
Yeah.
summer of 2013.
So it was 2 years before I started.
And 7 years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna do this from your memory from something that happened 7 years ago, and mine I wasn't there for. So we'll be naming
Yes.
the all stars here.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be some good stuff, It's gonna be a
See,
fun time.
this might get better as it goes on.
Yeah, the first couple seasons will be a little less interesting, and
Yeah.
for a lot of people that weren't around back then, well, really, most of the people that are playing the game right now weren't around back then, so the context isn't going to be there. So we'll do a little bit of an explanation as best we can, but obviously it's not going to be something you connect with quite as much. So let's start with goalie to make it easy. So we didn't really have much in the way of goalie stats from this season. If I can flip us over to, here we go, perfect. Um, if you take a look at the goalie stats going through, you'll notice that every single player has 0 games played at goalie, 0 wins, 0 shutouts, 0 saves, and 0 goals against. We had saves on a team level, but not saves on a individual level. So in terms of goaltending, the team that had the best goaltending in season one was the Colorado Avalanche, and the main goalie for that team was none other than Big V. Conveniently, PK was actually the GM of that team, but at the time was not a goalie, despite becoming one of the best goalies in LHL history later on, ironically. So the person who won the award for best goalie this season, based on the stats that we did have, was none other than Big V, who did the role reversal with PK later and became a defenseman. So interesting career trajectory that the two of them had. They were always really close friends in the game as well. Very tight for quite a long time. So But the actual original award for best goalie was actually named after Big V because he won it originally. And then I forget the name of the, was it Kiwi we changed it to?
Yeah. Kiwi.
Yeah, I think it was Kiwi. Yeah, it was. It was Kiwi. But anyway, so none other than Big V, and I believe he played the vast majority of the games at goalie. So for the most part, 70-ish save percentage, pretty fucking good, especially in 4v4. And a goals against average of 1.76 in 4v4 is insane to think about. If you guys consider what a 4v4 game would look like now, hell, consider what some 5v5 games look like for those of you that have played Toronto in this tournament. You can see how high scoring some of these games get, and to reduce the overall experience level of a lot of these players, reduce the ability for the goalies to make saves, and take one of the two defensemen off the ice, it's pretty easy to see how 4v4 would have been naturally more higher scoring. So to give up less than 2 goals a game in that environment is really impressive. So yeah, Big V takes the cake on that one by a pretty wide margin. Looking at defensemen, this is where things get a little more interesting. So taking the top 2 defensemen from the season into account were namely Tim Barrett, who had the most points by a defenseman at the time. You can see here 32 points in 18 games played, 1.78 points per game. Really good for a defenseman. And then the defenseman who actually won the award for best D-man on the season was none other than PK, who had only 17 points, but also in only 12 games, so not playing anywhere near as much as what Tim was able to at the time. So this is where the first quality debate comes in. Based on my memory, PK was the better defensive player of the two. He had actually played the game longer than Tim had. Tim was new when the LHL started, whereas PK had been around for a couple months. PK was actually one of the people that first started practicing with me and helped me get used to the base mechanics of the game. So he was here a very long time ago. I think it was earlier in 2013 when he showed up, and this season was around the summer of 2013. So but yeah, so PK had the experience and the better defensive play, but Tim was really good offensively. He had a really good set of hands, was able to make people miss consistently, and did his patented. He was one of the
Yeah.
first people
He
to really do it every time, which is the forehand, backhand, deke, and then score. And he would constantly, every time, come up the left side, cut to the middle across the goalie, going left to right, and then shoot that way. And he scored a very high percentage of his goals that way. And it was rare that he got saved because, going left to right as a goalie, when somebody's cutting across in front of you, it can be hard to tell which side they're going to put it in. They can put it low right, low left, top right, top left. They have the whole net to their advantage, and you have no reaction time. So,
I- is this or is this season one when it would have happened, or was it later on when Tim Barrett, that is, basically invented his own defensive style that was then
the
copied by
sit back by the goalie and then
yeah,
charge at a
and then
forward. Yeah,
torpedo at the guy at the puck
yeah,
carrier?
yeah. So Tim was the one who developed that strategy, which was a became a very common one actually for a while in 4v4. Um, it started in season 1, but he really refined a lot of that in season 2, and that's where he took a big step forward and became such a good
Yeah,
defenseman. I believe he won the award for best defenseman in season 2. Yes, he did.
that's right.
So he it's tough to attribute it specifically to one season because it was sort of a progression thing between the two of
Yeah.
them as he learned how to play the game better. But I would say in general, yeah, you can. It started here.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, I mean, that's worth something. There's
Hmm.
not too many players who developed a meta basically on their own of how to play, especially at defense.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that yeah, if he's doing that, even if it's like a rudimentary, he's just figuring it out. That's a pretty that's a pretty cool thing in his favor.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
One of the
And
more interesting players probably,
for
especially
sure,
in these early seasons.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's actually kind of a shame that he didn't stick around longer into 5v5 because Tim was I don't want to say quite superstar level, but he was close to it for the, early first sort of 4 or 5 seasons of the game. Um, he was, excuse me, I'm getting the hiccups here. He was an incredibly proficient player, and as somebody who was one of the newer players to the game versus some of the older veterans, it was really cool to see that, that development happen. Because you have players like myself, Tim, and Taser who all came in, when the LHL started. So we had to start from ground zero, whereas you had other players like Big V, Otto, PK, Dick McButts, DVD that had all been around for a few months before that. Dopey G is another one who you can see on the screen led the Avalanche in points. Uh, those players
Oh,
had sort
nice.
of a leg up, so it was cool to see where the top tier was when we joined, and then watch all these players that joined late start to move up and get closer and close that gap until they surpassed some of them. So that was a really interesting dynamic back then, and I do actually kind of miss that now. That doesn't really happen as much anymore. But given that, I think you made a really good point. PK was incredibly good, but didn't define what the sort of defense meta ended up looking like for a lot of 4v4. That was really Tim who was the one who came up with that and really took it and succeeded with it. For as ridiculous as it sounds of a defensive strategy, he was really good at it, and you have to give him credit for that. And a lot of people copied him from then on out. So we'll give it to Tim here.
Yeah. And if you look at All-Star, it's sort of all around. I know PK won Best D, so like it might look a little disingenuous to not make him the defensive All-Star, but Tim Barrett playing more games, scoring more, and I know maybe probably PK was a little better defensively, but Tim, I'm sure by the end of that season was about to kind of make a big breakthrough
Oh,
on.
and he did. When we get
Yeah.
to season 2, you'll see that. So
Yeah. Seems all around play. Apologies to the goalie who played a season on D and PK.
I'm sure PK's name will get called out a few more
Yeah,
times here.
I'm
He's gonna
positive.
he's gonna show up on this list, so I wouldn't worry
Yeah,
about it too much.
yeah. All right, so Tim Barrett, defenseman.
So, yes, we've got Big V on goalie, Tim on
I see you've
defense.
already written a name in on center.
Yes, yeah, center I think is really straightforward here, and
Yeah.
those who are watching the YouTube video, I will flip back over to the screen to show it after we fill it all out, but center I think is really straightforward. I mean, there's only one name in
Mm.
consideration for that, as I highlight it here in the stats. Fucking make it giant font too, I should. KS Auto by far was the most proficient center in the league at that point in time. I don't believe Dick McButts ended up playing in season one.
Don't
No,
see
he
his
did.
name.
He joined at the very end.
Oh, there
That's
he
right.
is. There
So
he
he would
is.
have been the other one who really could have contested for that, being another player like Otto who had been around for a while. And Dick McButts and KS Otto were probably the two best players coming into the LHL. It's kind of hard to tell because there hadn't really been much of structured leagues at that point. They had done one season of the HQML, so all opinions were based entirely off of that as far as like what players were good at what and whatnot. So it was really Dick McButts and Otto at the top, and you had some other names which a lot of people here won't really recognize, but the likes of Iskin, Dick Van Dyke or DVD, Dick Van Deek, apologies, uh, that were really good as well and at the top of their game. So other players that could have contended for it, but it really, I mean, Otto led the whole league in points by a lot. I think the second closest ended up being Nando at 32 points, tied with Tim
And Tim
Barrett,
Barrett. Yeah.
and Otto at 59 to
Mm.
put the differential there into place. I mean, he almost doubled the next closest person in points, which is not something that ever happened again in any of the future seasons. So to close this out with winger, I think there are sort of two options to really look through here in terms of proficiency on the season. I only say two options because I can't 100% confirm that one of them was a winger. I believe he was, but I'm not 100%. So the first one being Nando, who we mentioned a minute ago. We couldn't find any footage or evidence to confirm that Nando was a winger, but Nando was actually a player from Great Britain, much like Tidge and Jerry and whatnot that we know today. So for those who know them, know that you're playing with probably like 80 ping at best,
Ooh,
on a
yeah,
80
probably more
90
than that.
ping at a best case scenario, and in most cases it's probably closer to like 100 or 110. So for him to come over playing with that ping and put up, if I scroll over so you guys can actually see it, put up 2.46 points a game and 29 goals as a European player playing on North American servers, that's pretty impressive regardless of what the talent level was at the time, for everybody. So, and given the fact that he was working with such high ping, the likelihood that he was actually playing center on that team for the majority of it is pretty low. It's very unlikely that he'd be the one wanting to take faceoffs when his ping was quite that high. So, I
Of course, maybe he didn't know any better back then.
still, I think we both feel confident in saying it's
Yeah,
unlikely that he
probably.
was a center.
Of course, I don't know. Who is Player? Did he center?
Player was a guy literally named Player who we could never
Oh,
verify the identity of or anything like that, who played for the first like 2 or 3 seasons, and that was it.
oh,
He had a Reddit
weird.
account and everything. Yeah, I'm like 90% sure, as are most people, that it was an alias for somebody else who was playing for
Yeah,
multiple teams, but it was nothing we could ever verify at the time, and we didn't have things like Discord, and we hadn't thought of at that point using like Steam accounts to try to verify people and stuff like that too.
yeah,
So these were early days, very early days. So the only other one that I think you could potentially consider if Nando isn't a winger, would wind up being myself, just the only other person we've spoken
yeah,
about that was a top performer on the
yeah.
season.
And
Uh,
whose stats don't look as good as Nando's, but was also split in time with people, and as we know, based on the very next season, was the best player in the game.
not at the time, definitely not at the
What's
time. So
what kind of off season are we looking at between 1 and 2?
let me. Okay, hold on. I have the schedule up here in this tab. We're gonna take a look. So season
Yeah,
one started in July, and I don't have the year here, but I can tell you with certainty it was
yeah,
2013, and it ended in September of 2013.
September. Okay, so when does season 2 start?
Season two started in October of
So that you're
2013.
telling me in up to a month, probably not a full month, probably a couple weeks, a
It
couple
was
to a
about
few
four
weeks of
weeks.
off
It was
season,
about 4 weeks.
you went from not as good as Nando to 100 and whatever points and blowing the league out of the water.
Yes.
I don't know, Dial. I'm pretty sure you were playing like 5 minutes a game
I wasn't playing only 5 minutes a game.
and only ended up with one fewer point than old Nando.
It
Well, more games played, but
yeah, a lot more
probably
games played.
less minutes.
One and a half points per game
All right.
to 2.5 is pretty big difference. So
Yeah. And old Nando,
look,
probably the correct
you want to give me credit
pick.
for it? Give me credit for it when we get to season two.
Yeah. All right. Nando, though, looks like, based on the stats here, probably the best outside of Auto,
Yep.
or if somebody played at least a reasonable amount of games.
Okay,
Yep.
so
Hey, whoa, hold on. Before we go, one thing we skipped over on D as D/O. So I don't know if he played a bunch. He's got way more goals than assists. We probably played some forward, but Fuzzy Wuzzy, you have to be mad on Boston. Pretty good little stat line there. Led the team
yeah,
in scoring.
yeah. Fuzzy, or again, why you have to be mad. It was why you, not you.
Oh, why you?
Yep, yep, important to differentiate. He turned out to be one of the better offensive defensemen early on in the like 4v4 era and kind of into early 5v5 as well, up to like season 7-ish. He was a very, very proficient player. And this was sort of same thing for him as it was for the rest of us that I mentioned earlier. This is like his first season, first time playing the game. So it's another one of those players that was sort of a breakout player, and he was in a way almost like the Zam before Zam,
Cool.
in terms of
Overrated.
kind of.
Gotcha.
Some people would probably agree with that, honestly, but he was a offensive defenseman who was able to put up points and took the opportunity to go up on offense when he could. So, in terms of just comparing him to somebody who had a similar career, similar play style, similar trajectory, that's right about where it is. Like he was probably slightly below Zam in terms of what he could, like what he was capable of at his peak. But in terms of somebody that was like, he could be a first defenseman on a team, but he'd be a fucking incredible second defenseman on a team.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, if he was a first defenseman, he did kind of need somebody or like forwards to help rotate back for him because he'd come up and play the pucks a lot. So he was somebody that you kind of needed that rotation for to really get the best usage out of. Whereas Zam kind of like started out as that and then built up to another level where Fuzzy never really got to. So
All right.
anyway, okay. So getting back to this, so we're looking at
Season 2.
season 2. Um, just
Want to do the two easiest positions here first?
uh,
D and winger.
yes, yeah, we can. So
So
let me
let's
let me get this
yeah.
open again.
So
Okay.
winger. Yeah, like I just mentioned, old Dial went from split in time to 75 goals and 104 points. What's the next highest? 64? Looks like it.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
104.
75. Lucic at
Oh,
75.
Lucic
Yep.
just at 75.
Yep.
Okay, which is almost 30 less. 29 less than
Yep.
you. You had as many goals as he had points, and then you added 29 assists.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. I mean, maybe not Led was carrying you, but
He
uh,
always carried me,
yeah.
So
But there's just jot that one down on the way. The first truly amazing LHL season, that is to say, 100 points, which only happened a handful of times.
yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Probably gonna happen again.
No, that's fair. The only other winger or the next closest true winger that season in terms of points was Iskin at 60. So
Good old
I'm
Iskin.
pretty sure it was Claude that was taking most of the faceoffs on that team, and Iskin was the one who was on the wing. So he would be the next closest. And Iskin was, you can see, scoring a lot of goals this season, but he was known for being like crab before crab. He was the first, elite in quotes playmaker in the league at that point in time, and was well known for his ability to pass really well and to be able to like set up all sorts of crazy plays. So he was probably the first like really consistent and good passer that could like elevate pucks and stuff over sticks. He really pioneered a lot of that, and I'm sure Crab would tell you he learned a lot from playing really late night games with Iskin and Dick McButts, who were an incredibly dynamic pairing together. I don't think we ever saw it in the LHL, but they played together in HQML, and if you ever played against them in pubs, it was ridiculous. They were like the Matt and Dial before Matt and Dial. It was a lot
Awesome.
of fun to
Let me get
watch and
Iskin
play against
signed up.
them. I don't think Iskin is going to sign up. I think it's been a little too long
It's been
for
like what,
him.
7 years?
About 6, I think. Yeah,
He wasn't there when I got here, so yeah, it's
yeah.
gotta be 6 years. 5,
Um,
6.
so that's a pretty easy one. We'll get that out of the way.
Yeah, another probably easy one. I
On
think is the D
defense,
man.
yep, I think we're going with the exact same one that we did for season 1. Tim Barrett, by
Yeah,
far the
but
most points as a defenseman, 52
good
on the
lord.
season. Similar points per game actually to what he was able to do for season 1 actually. So in terms of like point production, it wasn't necessarily that he improved heavily in that aspect. But just that he was so dominant for 28 out of the 30 games on the season, and he also has 4 games in net, scoring 52 points still. So pretty proficient play to say the least. And I think the next closest defensemen were like Taze at 23. You've got Dopey at 34, Goose at 25. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. There are no other defensemen that are, and all of those guys aren't even in the range of him. I mean, you look at Dopey G as the next closest one at 34, right? And Tim's 18 points above him.
He's
And
also plus 43.
and they both played 24 games as a skater. Dopey
Yeah.
was plus 16, Tim was plus 43. So I think
Yep.
this one is a bit of a no-brainer here in the sense that it's got to be Tim. So,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, easy pick.
So, the best goalie on the season. Shall we go with this one? Or the
Yeah,
the
just a
first team All-Star goalie?
yeah,
So,
quick glance over. Looks like there's not too many options of, really good starting goal. It looks like there's only,
so
you know,
the goalie with the best save percentage at the time for this season was actually Savnor on
oh,
Colorado,
where's that?
who had a 69%
Oh, that's pretty
in
good.
20 games and a 2.73 goals against
No,
average.
11 games. Only in
Sorry,
11
in
in that.
11 games. Yeah, in 11 games. Sammy was the one who ended up winning the award, mostly because the 11 games played here from Savnor is not,
Yeah, not as good a sample size.
yeah,
Sammy played double the game. Same with
very
PK.
good.
Well, PK did 18 in that, but he played 10 as a skater.
So very good in that, amount of games that he played at that position is incredibly high. Again, 69% is fantastic in any season, let alone in
Mhm.
4v4. So that was really big from him. But yeah, the number of games played, barely over a third of the season. I mean, that's what, in the NHL we would consider to be like a backup goaltender, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those goalies do not wind up winning any of the awards unless they play at least like 60 to 60, 6% of the games, right? Because
Yeah.
they're not really bona fide starters at that point if they don't.
Mhm.
So,
Look
um,
at that. He doesn't even have the. I mean, only 2 games in net, but a higher save percentage from his teammate there, Optimus Rhyme, playing as Matt.
yep. Optimus Rhyme.
Optimus Rhyme's probably on the stat page on a different team. Yeah, there he is in Detroit.
Matt, you will never let that go. Well, I will
Yeah.
never let that go. You will never give it up.
Matt
But
told me like 3 months ago that he doesn't understand how that happened. He said him and Optimus Rhyme used to talk about how ridiculous that was.
yeah, he's told me that too. But I can tell
But you
you,
just
they never
the
once played together in an LHL game. They never once played together in pubs. They both were conveniently Toronto fans that played goalie in real life for hockey teams and lived in the greater Toronto area. They actually both lived, like, in terms of specifically what towns they lived in, they were in the same town or in like the next town over from each other.
allegedly.
So, and like their Steam accounts, like one of their two Steam accounts had like no games on it, and the other one did. So the whole thing was a little bit suspect to say the least. So, but anyway, yeah. So I mean,
Yeah,
you could already see this was actually Matt's first season, and you could see
Matt's
he,
looking good in 14 games played.
yeah,
Holy shit.
yeah, and it only went up from there. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, so as far as goalie goes, due to sample size of the goaltenders, the sort of top three on the season were ended up being Sammy, 2.13 goals against average, 62% save rate. Then PK, 61% save rate, 2.6 goals against average. And then T-Lors, who was a 59.5% save rate and 2.38 goals against average. So
Thanks. Sammy's
Sammy
looks like
Sammy
the easy
wins in
pick here.
both of the statistical categories, and all three of them had 23, 18, and 24 games played at goalie respectively. So that's a good sample size for all of them.
Yeah.
It's close, but I would edge towards Sammy on this one,
Yeah.
just based on the statistics. It's unfortunately a little bit too long ago to remember sort of specifics about it or context that goes into it. You could say that New Jersey, being a technically 500 team at 15, 12, and 3, has a harder time in terms of, playing defense in front of the goalie than what Chicago or Washington did, both with significantly better winning records. So you could argue that PK had a harder job to do,
Yeah.
but I think Sammy being that extra step above does kind of weigh that out. And New Jersey had Dopey G on defense, plus Iskin on offense, and Dopey G was one of the better defensemen, one of the more experienced ones at the time, and then Iskin being one of the more defensively responsible forwards as well. Think it, kind of paints the picture
Yeah.
enough.
Man,
So
Andy T played a lot of games. Oh,
Yeah.
there's this fabled game in net.
Yep.
Look at
Like
that.
10 goals against and 2 saves. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. 16 save percentage, which
That's
maybe I think is the worst of all time.
I could tell you that game, you could see his plus minus right there.
Yeah.
He did not play on the ice for that one, you can tell. And
Yep.
Dopey G and Iskin were also not present for that game, as you can tell. So
Yep.
anyway, okay,
That's
so
funny.
we'll go with Sammy for season 2. Then comes down to center, which this is similar to goalie. It's pretty close. So the top 3 centers on the season in terms of points were Lucic at 75. Then you have Notled at 71. And then down to Washington, you have Otto at 64. So Otto has the best points per game. He ended up missing a few over the other two. Otto also, sorry, Otto's second in goals by 1, but had the best plus minus of all of them. So
Yeah.
you could argue that he's a more
No,
impactful
Burn Warnham
player.
+6, or not Burn Warnham. I was looking above Burn Warnham. His teammate, not led,
Oh, sorry,
+61.
sorry. I looked at the 32 for not led. Okay, so
Yeah, me too. I even read the wrong name.
hmm
Yeah, no, not led. Best plus minus on Chicago. Otto. Yeah, Otto the best points per game. Otto looks. I don't know who he's playing forward with here. Looking at
He was
this,
playing forward
looks like
with Noob
Noob.
for a lot of
Oh
it. Yeah, Noob,
God,
and I believe he played some with Sweaty Goals as well, and a little bit with Goose here or
probably with
there.
Goose.
Yeah,
Yeah. Look at
so
their plus minus, like Noob and Goose at
Noob.
-22 and -21, and Otto +53.
So the reason for that is Noob and Goose started out the season on Boston, which I haven't been
Uh
showing on this screen. But if we take a little scroll over here to the left, we can take a peek at the 2 worst teams this season.
Probably underrated
The
Crab season, just based on how much better he is than the rest of his team.
Yep. The 6-23-1 Boston Bruins is where the two
Oh
of
hell
them
yeah.
came from, and then the other last place team this season was the 7-22-2 Detroit Red Wings. So 2 teams that were not particularly on par with the rest, and you can kind of see why just looking at the rosters. There really wasn't a carry forward on any of these, which really makes a big difference. At this point in time, there weren't that many carry forwards in the league in general. You could see Dick McButts did not play this season. So the only carry forwards in the league really were myself, Otto, Lucic, who was still coming into his role as that, and like Matt was a rookie, so he doesn't really count. And then you could potentially say Iskin, but Iskin's more of a playmaker that was forced into a carry role for New Jersey, but still was a step above what either Boston or Detroit had. So this is clear case of, these teams have elite players and these 2 teams don't. So you can see the difference that makes, especially when you have good players around the team still, like you have Crab on Boston, Noob, whose other name was Tiggs for a while. So if you hear me say
Oh,
Tiggs,
that's
that's who I mean.
Tiggs. Okay.
Um, so Noob/Tiggs and Goose were also, proficient players at the time. They weren't bad by any means. The 2 of them were on Boston, so you have those 3 that are kind of holding up the fort there. And then you got like Germs, K-Bomb, Pet the Pizza was pretty good and
Oh my
underrated.
God, K-bomb on O.
Evcop got his start there, Jarvin as well. So like Detroit had some pieces to work with, Boston had some pieces to work with as well, but neither had a player to really carry them. So anyway, getting back to the center on the season, I actually I kind of want to go with Otto again for this one. I'm gonna be
Yeah, me
honest.
too. The best points per game, and looks like he doesn't have the forward support that Lucic, or well, definitely not an outlet, but
Yeah,
Lucic really had. Matt
yeah.
didn't play, or
I would say
Matt
of the
played
3 of
enough,
them,
probably.
Notleb was most the product of his team of
Yeah.
the 3 that we're looking at here. Lucic was incredibly good. I don't want to dismiss what he did at all. And in terms of like carrying his team, he certainly put in much more of a carry effort than Otto did. In terms of like the amount of scoring that had to go through him in order for them to like win the games, but I still think Otto was the better center, if you know what I mean. So like between the
Yeah.
2 of them, I would probably say Lucic would actually be more likely to be an MVP that season because he carried that team more and was more responsible for that team's success than Otto had to be because Otto had the better pieces around him, but Otto is still the better player.
Yeah.
If that kind of, that logic
Yeah.
follows there. So
And you see it in the points per game, and yeah, and at least Lucic had Matt for those handful of games. I bet that probably impacted his points a good deal.
hmm
Lucic's, that is.
agreed.
Not that he wasn't helping Matt out too. Like Lucic was obviously awesome.
All right, so let's
Yeah, Otto.
go over to season 3.
The worst looking, because it wasn't redone along with season 2 and 1. So this says the worst looking colors on the whole stats sheet. Thank you,
Yeah,
Montreal and New York.
yeah, it's pretty fucking abysmal to look at.
Yeah,
So
this
pulling that up,
sucks.
yep, it's pretty bad. And even worse than that, where's the freaking top performers section, man? Like, what the heck is this?
Yeah, what was Dyal doing?
Who designed this? No comment.
Season 3, though.
So
Well, you could go into the list. That's sort of the top performers. You could see it, which is why you won't see Dyal on the list
true, I
or
can
of the
pull
stats,
up
but you'll
here.
see him on the list.
So we'll look at this for now. But season 3, I actually did retire partway through the season, about 3/4 of the way through or something like that, and I finished with 60 points in 20 games, just for reference to throw that in there. Um, but we'll go back to the rest of the stats for now. So I think first and foremost, the top 2 offensive players we're looking at, which are both centers this season, is Dick McButts and Matt
Oh
were
wow, they're
number
both
1 and 2.
centers.
Yes, they were. They're both centers. So putting them as like they're both contending for the same spot here, which is a really
Yeah.
interesting discussion. Uh, Matt, as you can see, ended up missing about 5 of the games, and 3.74 games, he had already well established himself as an elite player at this point. But I do think we have to tip the cap to Dick McButts this time
Oh
around.
yeah.
4.38 points per game, over
Yeah, that's
100 points.
nuts.
Second time that somebody had scored 100 points ever in a season. He was the second player to do it and beat my total of 104 for the season prior. Fuck you, Dick McButts.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, hey, I
so
think you get it right now. You get him. You won literally one up, one more the next season, so you don't have anything to complain about.
so with that, I think Dick McButts is the choice for
Yeah.
center here.
Yeah, that's a nutty points per game,
Yeah.
even in the era. Yeah, that's
So,
good. Well, then I guess that makes the winger choice easy. Old retiree.
yeah, I mean, is that entirely fair? We're gonna, I'll
Uh,
scroll over here so you guys can see it, but we're basically gonna ignore Minnesota and Toronto.
yeah.
There's not
That
much
that will
there.
be the case for a long time. Actually,
Yeah,
that's not true. No, season 4 they were good. They were good the next Toronto. Unlike Minnesota, I don't know.
Minnesota has a storied history in both real life and in the LHL of being
Similar
not
track records.
good.
Yeah. Season
So,
3. Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, you're the only other
so
player 3 points per game. Lucic also center, Otto center,
well,
Pet the
Lucic was a
Pizza.
winger. Lucic was a winger this
Oh,
season.
winger.
Yeah. So you could see he kind of dropped off a little bit in terms of, excuse me, fucking hiccuping again.
Yeah.
In terms of
Oh yeah,
production,
because he's playing with the MB. Yeah, sorry, I
yeah, a
didn't even
bit of
see
a
him on
fall
that
off.
team.
At this point, he wasn't the main like center of the team anymore, and he was really the supplementary player to DMB this time around. So he would be a winger to consider, and of the wingers left outside of myself, I would say he's probably the choice. If we don't want to count me being retired, and leaving partway through the season. So I'll leave that judgment up to you because I
I
feel like
think
I
that's
shouldn't like
yeah,
comment
that's
on
fair.
that.
And yeah, I don't know. He did have such a better season than and Lucic is playing with a guy who scored more, and we're comparing Matt and DMB, giving it to DMB, and you playing with the worse in quotes of the two and doing better than Lucic playing with, the higher scorer.
I was also splitting time with Pet the Pizza this season, which
Yeah,
he and I used to split the games pretty much half and half. We would come through about halfway through and split it out, and I'd
Yeah.
leave
So
Matt in the
what I'm
game. And
hearing is you should have been at like 5.5 points per game
I don't
here.
know
That's
5.5,
kind of what you're saying.
but
7.5 points per. You heard it from Dial that
this
he was
this was the
held back.
last season where I was ever splitting time with somebody else. After this, nobody else ever took me out and like benched me for any reason. And I was actually the GM of this team. When I left, it ended up going to Matt, but
No,
I was the GM at the time, so I was benching myself to let Pizza play. So
hey, Pizza's
anyway,
doing pretty good.
that's
Throw the old Dial on the list. That's
okay.
such a good season. A season lost to history due to your retirement and not showing up on the stat page, even though you're in the list and we have your
Yeah,
stats from that season.
for those who remember my interview, I think we talked about it there. But if you ask anybody on this team, they will likely and fairly blame me for being the reason why that team did not win the cup. They ended up losing
Yeah.
the finals in 7. So,
Yeah.
which, kind of
Old
makes
Dial.
sense when you lose one of your starters. So, I'm sorry.
Oh well.
I'm sorry.
None of these guys are left, right? Except Taze and
Yeah,
Kapanen and Kwoof, sorta.
yeah.
Look at these guys. Frisk. That's Frisk, right? Roman Polak.
Yes, it is. That is Brisk
Cool.
or Jake Allen.
Who's playing
Okay.
goalie for this team? Briz. Oh,
Yeah. So,
yes.
yep. So Briz, I think just to go to the goalie next. Um, I mean, I think this kind of goes without saying. There was also Ticklebox, who was where the hell is he?
Montreal, 69%
Sorry,
save
Montreal. Why was I scrolling down to Washington? So Ticklebox ended up having a 69.3% save rate, 1.44 goals against average. With that said, Tealers used to bench him at the end of games so that he would inflate
Steelers on
his.
Washington.
Sorry, Ace Ball, whoever the GM was, used to bench him so that it would inflate his save percentage. But that's neither here nor there. The other goalie that did really well was Briz at a 73% save rate and a 1.67 goals against average. He ended up winning the best goalie award for that season. He had the better save percentage. Tickle had the better goals against average, but Tickle was taken out of games. So I think in general, it does make sense. As close as it is, it does make sense given the context to give Briz the shout at goalie here.
Yeah,
And
guy's
then
favorite player.
you get to defense, and defense is a little tough. So Taze and Tim Barrett at the time were still considered to be the number 1 and number 2 defensemen. This season specifically was like season 2, Taze took a leap forward and became really good and was one of the top 2 or 3. This season was really when Taze took a huge leap and became significantly better defensively than even Tim was at this point in time. Tim scored more, 43 points on the season plus 41, but Taze almost lost a lot of points by nature of being on a team with Matt and I, because Matt and I would go back and forth with the puck so much that a lot of his breakout passes wouldn't turn directly into goals. It would be pass to one of the two of us, pass to the other, and then that one scores. So if secondary assists were counted, Taze probably would have had like 50. But because they aren't in this game, Taze got kind of cheesed by that. And as opposed to Tim on Washington, whose offense was funneled, entirely through KS Auto. So, you pass the puck to Auto and he scores. It is a much different
Yeah.
environment
Tim Barrett was
for.
his own. He was a good goal scorer.
He
He's always
was,
put.
he was, but that's kind of the difference, differential, Jesus, between Taze and Tim was the systems that they played in. Washington was very much a solo play, goal scoring offense. Get the puck to a goal scorer, he dekes someone out and scores. Whereas Chicago was more of a team play oriented one, a lot of passing around to get to somebody who was open and had a good shot. So Taze ended up winning Best Defenseman of the Year because of that, and I'm a little biased towards him because I got to see
Yeah.
it firsthand, but I would say that Tazer was the better overall defenseman, and that if you had flipped the two of them, Taze would have still done better than Tim on Washington, and Tim would not have done as well as Taze did on Chicago, personally.
Yeah. I could I can see that from what I know. I mean, all I have is stats to go on. If you're just going on that, it looks like Tim Barrett probably had the better season, but and probably not as strong a team. Even I don't know who won. Who won this season?
It was
Montreal.
Montreal that won. Yeah,
Okay, so
it's
Washington didn't
Montreal,
win.
Chicago in the finals.
Okay. Yeah, I trust the pick. I mean, I've seen Taze play, and if this is when Taze really became great defense, plus 61 too. I mean, again, Dial and Matt combo for a lot of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Briz in net. I mean, that was a
yeah,
superstar team, so
yeah. That you screwed them. Oh well.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't know. We could. I I'll leave it to you here. I'm not
Okay, it's a little
100%.
biased, I will admit,
No,
but I'm gonna go with Taze on that one, trying to be as objective as possible. I know the point difference is huge, but I think in terms of overall, the better defenseman at the time was Taser. So,
that's fair. All right.
okay,
Good for
so
season
let's
4
go to season 4,
or
where
season 3.
we're I'm not gonna say we're whipping through these. It's actually the exact opposite.
You're gonna probably take less time as this
I
goes
I,
on.
I hope
Once.
I hope so, because we're already at 50 minutes, which is impressive.
Oh,
Um,
this one's gonna be 3 hours long.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're 3 seasons in, so this is pretty
Well,
good.
it's hard. It's hard to do these early seasons. All right,
It is. It
let's
is. It is
season
harder.
4. I'll give you now that we've kind of established it. This one's really easy. Uh, well, not exactly. It's not
We'll
exactly
take a
really
look at
easy.
the top performers here,
Yeah.
to
So
make this
this,
a little more straightforward. So defenseman, Taze was actually a forward this season.
yeah, yeah, he
So
did
the
not score
person
61.
person who ended up winning best defenseman this season was, I believe, Go Leafs Go, who
Yep,
had 59 points, highest out of all the defensemen outside of Big V, who had 58. So they were really close to one another. Those two were a notable step above the rest of the league in terms of defensemen. Uh, it was Leafs that ended up getting the edge on it. So tough to say in hindsight, really. Toronto and Anaheim. Well, sorry, actually, I'm thinking of Ottawa next season, so I take that back. Toronto was a very good team. They were the number one seed. Anaheim was a middling team that sort of got rebuilt in season 5 and became really good. So season 5 is probably the better time to give Big V the nod there. But he did a lot to carry that Anaheim team, whereas Go Leafs Go was not so much the driving force as Otto was on this team. So a little tough, but I would probably give Leafs the edge this time around.
yeah,
This team was much better defensively than Anaheim was, which is a knock on Big V, even though Big V put up a lot of points. Defensively, they struggled more than Toronto did, and as the primary defenseman on both teams, you do kind of have to place some of the blame on the number one defenseman there, which would be Big V. So
yeah.
I personally think Go Leafs Go, or NHL Killa. I'll
He's
write
go
in
Leafs go
both.
this season.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably his best season. Good one to highlight.
Yep.
One best D.
Yep.
Probably would be named the all team, the first team at the time.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. He would have been
Yeah.
named that at the time.
Easy winger pick again. Dyal 106 points. One ups DMB after DMB had one more than him. Couldn't handle
Yeah,
it,
but then
could you? You couldn't
Otto
do it.
had two more than me, so
Isn't Ottawa a
just
center?
yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
lamenting.
Well, but here's the thing. Dyal probably third best forward here this season, but based on how we're doing it, winger versus center.
Oh, I would say
Uh,
for sure third best forward.
yeah,
For sure.
yeah. So 106 points. This is the unfortunate part. The old, I say Dial winger, no question, no contest. But the guy who leads the league in points, the all-time most points in a season, 108 points by KS Otto, and would not give it to him because Matt at over 5 points a game and knowing what he did with playing with Ace and Dick Doug.
And DVD, those were his three line mates
Yeah.
that he rotated in and out. And he
Yeah,
was the one who first put Dalfin in net too. Started
yeah.
Dalf's career in net.
Matt
Put
this
it
is
this
the
way.
all-time
Look at the
carry
points
job.
that Matt has, right?
Yeah.
95 points. And then look at the rest of his team. Added together is 61.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff.
He had 95 points and the rest of his team combined had 61.
most of which are assists on Matt goals.
Yep. Otto
The
had
guy only played.
108, and the rest of his team had 135.
Yeah.
And just for the
Yeah.
sake of doing it, I had 106. The rest of my team had 89.
Matt, best
So
points per game in the league. Not even close. Over a full point more
yeah,
per game than Otto
yeah,
on a way worse team. The way worse team that won the cup
yep, yep.
because of this
Rookie,
guy.
technically like rookie season for Delph and Net. DVD had been kind of just an average LHL forward. He had never really like stepped forward as much as a lot of people expected him to based on his HQML status. And then Dick Dug it was also a complete rookie, as was Ace, which is
Yeah.
Norse Bruin 91, same player. All these players that he's working with are either European players in the sense of Igorka here, or players that were basically rookies. So yeah,
That's
the
awesome.
Matt Carey job was pretty insane that season. So
So
I would say in terms of better player, it would have to be Matt. Otto,
yeah,
you could argue, had a potentially better season because he had more points and better plus
he didn't.
minus, more goals. But I think if you're taking everything into context, Matt played 8 less games. Matt had way less to work with. Matt brought that team to a cup, so I'd have to give it to Matt.
This is an auto snub just based on the positions of how we're doing this
Yeah.
because that is an all like Otto literally is that is like one of the best seasons ever
Oh
by
yeah.
Otto here,
Oh yeah.
and it's just based on how we're doing this is getting left off.
Yeah, which
Just
is
shout
unfortunate.
out to just
He doesn't deserve
Otto.
that.
Yeah, that really screwed him just because he played C and how we decided to do this beforehand.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right,
Okay, so
and
looking at
goalie,
goalies, goalies
easy pick.
well, the person who won best goalie here was actually K-Bomb.
Oh.
He was the one who
Oh, look
took
at that. No,
home.
I didn't look at the games played there.
Yeah, he
Briz
was the
did
one
not play a
who
whole
took home the
mess of
the
them.
most. Yeah, Briz ended up missing almost half the season. He played in 15
Oh
of
yeah,
the
Briz can go to
28
hell then.
games. So he kind of got left off, unfortunately for him. He had a great save percentage, goals against average wasn't as good. So that kind of knocks him down as like a tick in the same way that we took Savinor down, 2 seasons ago.
Yep.
So K-Bomb was the one who ended up winning best goalie, and I think that was fair. He had a slightly worse save percentage, but better goals against average, and won 8 more games than Sammy did by comparison on Buffalo. So if you look at the win rate of this, winning 19 out of 23 games for K-Bomb is fucking
Yep.
incredible. I mean, that's insane. It's hard to
Yeah, that
find that
counts.
level of, luck. It's hard to attribute it to that at that point. He, was meaningfully contributing to those wins, so you got to give him the nod there.
Yeah, and he won best goalie.
Yep.
So
All right, so
easy.
that finishes up season 4. So
Whip
let's see
through
what
that one.
what it's looking like now.
Here's another really, really well, unless you wanna lie and give DMB credit over yourself on season 5. So maybe we can talk about this one.
Oh, well, I mean, I personally would, but we'll get there.
Maybe
Um,
it might be.
well, okay, so again, DMB was a center here.
Oh, never mind. DM.
Yeah,
Oh, DMB gets screwed. I was literally gonna say DMB. Look at the goal participation gets
yeah.
it over you,
So
but
DMB, Matt Lucic are all centers here.
no.
And so as a
Well,
result, looking at the three of them, they all had amazing seasons, but they're all contending for the exact same spot. And we're having yet another Matt situation where if you've noticed a trend, he never plays the full amount of games ever. Shocking that
Matt,
that
are you
evolved.
sure?
Yeah,
Are you
shocking.
sure?
Shocking that that started back then and then only got worse as the seasons went on. So I think same logic as last season. It's unfortunately a snub to DMB to not get the nod for this one, but unfortunately
It's only a
Matt,
3 game difference too.
yeah, and with all the context, Matt was a better, more complete player at this point in time. DMB was still disgusting. He was
If you guys
the second
listening
best
want to
player,
go
but
check out the season 4 finals, I think a lot of that's on YouTube still, and I'm sure people listening have probably heard me say this, but I went back and watched this a while ago, probably with you, Dial, and watching Matt play with you next to him, the guy who leads the league in scoring, over 4 points a game, Dial Oriax, looks like somebody who doesn't know what he's doing compared to your line mate and
Oh
Matt.
yeah, Matt
He was
was
just so good.
he was on another level of good, and we
Yeah,
talk about it all the time. In like every
yeah.
face-off, I feel like he comes up, the old ones and the new ones, and I just wish that the players we had now were around for
Could have
that,
seen it.
or I wish more accurately that Matt was like that version of Matt was still playing today because holy crap, was it fun to play with. And in a lot of cases, you're just sitting there watching them in awe, like how the fuck did he do that? It was like taking Juice, Otto, and Guy and Crab and smashing them in together to one player that can do everything that all four of them can regularly. It was
Yep.
incredible. Like, which is why I will always say he was the best player of all time, and
Yeah.
nobody will ever be able to convince me otherwise. So,
So
okay, so winger for this,
gotta be
really.
Dial.
The other one to potentially look at would be Mr. TB. I mean, he was the next,
Oh,
top performing winger on the season. Um,
the rest of these.
but
Well, no, Timu.
oh
Timu's
right,
on
Timu,
DMB's
Timu
team.
right above him. Yep. So Timu, Mr. TB, and I think actually Otto was playing wing for Bo. He might have been wing on this season. It was an interesting time on
I know
Detroit.
he didn't do so hot.
Yeah,
So
it's an interesting time on Detroit, but um, so yet again,
42
two
goals
two
for.
seasons in a
That's plenty.
row, a amazing season in Auto season 4 and then DMB season 5 gets snubbed because of the position-based awards here. So
Yeah, DMB probably had the second best. Like he's kind of close to Matt, honestly.
yeah, he was
It's
really good. So yeah,
way better goal participation than Matt. I
I
guess,
have
of
to
course, Matt missed a bunch of games, and you would have been scoring 10 points a game there. So whatever.
I guess I have to I can't be too upset as I'm the one who's benefiting from us doing it this
Yeah,
positional way like this. But yeah, Matt, or sorry, not Matt, DMB and Auto absolutely deserve recognition and really, should be
yeah.
on this
Do you
list.
want to wait? Well, we don't really need to, and it's that you wouldn't do it in a normal sport, but like, who really cares, Ratchet? Do you want to kind of take a look at the playoffs and kind of weigh it in from here? Because here's where we have playoff stats, and here's where you see Matt
Um,
really blasting DMB too.
we can just for this season, we can just throw a quick shout out to it in the interest of time. Matt,
Yeah,
6.43 points per game.
yeah.
Just let that
DMB
one
pretty good,
sit.
over 5.5, but that's not quite 6.43.
Imagine having 5.5 points per game and it being like still a full point per game behind the person in first.
Yeah,
Imagine being that good and still not being good enough.
that's so good. DMB was so good.
He was. He was.
Man, he's getting screwed here. Oh well.
He is, absolutely. So I definitely feel bad about that. And again, Otto the season prior. So,
Well,
um,
we're done seeing Matt on these lists. So if DMB puts up and I'm sure he's gonna be on here.
yeah. So in terms of defensemen, this one I think has to go to Big V.
Yep.
This Ottawa team was basically the Anaheim team revamped. Still got the core of Gabe and Big V. And then now you've got Ev Cobb and a mix of proper cheese and Ticklebox in net. Really, really, really good team. They
Look
went
at Ticklebox's
18.
save percentage.
I know. They went 18-3. So it was pretty fucking legit. And Big V was a huge part of the reason why they were able to find that level of success.
This is the
Big
team that
V
got worked by Matt in the playoffs and
Big
swept.
V, so Big V, in
Yeah.
fairness, though, now that I'm remembering this more, Big V did play a good bit of offense here alongside Gabe, so
Oh
his
yeah.
point production is a little bit inflated. So thinking about it more, mm, that's a little tough. Ev Cobb was more the primary defenseman on that team, and it was actually Taser that ended up winning best defenseman on the season. Playing for Washington, he had 36 points in comparison to Big V's 56. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's no way to see the split of points for offense to defense. But if that's how it was voted at the time, it's likely that that was the case. And actually, here's a good way to tell. Let's look at who had most points by a D-man for that season. Um,
Okay.
it was Taze. So Big V was
Oh,
not
so Big
considered a
V was playing
defenseman.
forward.
Yep,
Okay, Big V played more games
yep.
than forward. All right, well, go to hell,
So
Big V.
yep. So it's got to be Taser then at that point.
Yep.
So nod to Big V, but clearly not enough games played at defense at the
Should have
time.
set
So
D.
yep.
He's probably he might have been back checking a lot. Probably, honestly, team with fucking Gabe and Evcop. Evcop was
So
probably okay.
in terms of goalie for this season,
Yeah.
the person who won best goalie was Dal fan,
He played the
which
most games in. I don't know about that.
yeah, that's actually looking back, I'm not sure why Dalf was voted for that.
Do you have the old awards voting somewhere? Maybe we can pull that
I
up
I
and see the
don't
split.
I don't at the
Damn.
time or right now, but yeah,
He
that is
like
really
PK had a
interesting.
better save percentage, better goals against, more wins, 3 shutouts. Like he had fewer saves. Uh,
Yeah, that is really
Even
interesting.
Sammy, like
Okay, all right.
Sammy
I
had a better
actually I
season than
found the
Dal.
voting breakdown. I found it. So we had Tickle voted for Dalfan. Sammy voted for Dalfan. Uh, Tickle and Sammy were both GMs. So the list I'm
Yep.
going through here is GMs.
Sammy didn't vote for himself.
Bo, GM of Detroit, voted for Sammy. So both Tickle and Sammy not voting for
Yeah.
themselves is part of the problem here. Lucic voted for PK.
Yep.
Matt voted for Dalfan. Leafs voted for Dalfan.
Yeah.
Super Hot Glue voted for Dalfan. And Fuzzy Wuzzy voted for Sammy. So
Okay.
Dalfan ended up getting 5 votes. Sammy got 2. Tickle did not get a single vote. And
PK
PK
got
got
one.
1.
So it looks to me like PK or Sammy should have won. I understand Leafs voting Sammy. It's his goalie. I'm sure Dolph was really good. He just didn't like looking at the stats here. It's like not even close.
Yeah, I mean the team was like they were
That is
12 and
so
9.
weird.
They were like an okay team, but they
I
weren't.
bet he won them some games.
I'm sure he
That's
did.
probably what did it.
I'm sure he did. But in terms of statistically, it's hard to look back and say that. I'm willing to bet that
And it, yeah,
the lack of votes for Ticklebox might be the
yeah,
same
Tickle
sort of like taking him out of net
fewer games.
bullshit. That was something that happened with Tickle a lot. Um,
Yeah. Well, PK though is the weird one to me. Like, oh, I see.
yeah,
Lucic voting for him makes sense, but I bet PK is still a bit of a mixed bag back in these days.
still the goals against average and save percentage are higher than the other people behind him by a lot. I mean, look at the goals
Yeah.
against average compared to Sammy, who was
Yeah, it's
second in
insane.
votes, or compared to Dalfan. So
Like PK looks
I,
like he had the best season
I'm
of
giving this
all
one
of
to
them.
PK.
Yeah.
I think that's where we should
I
put
feel
this
like
one.
The Matt vote probably came from he knew Dalf was good because of the last season and
Yeah,
probably voted him
yeah.
just to,
With
give
the
him that.
context we have, I would say PK is it would
Yeah.
be my choice here.
I
Not a slight
wonder why
against not a slight
I wonder
against
why he didn't
Dalfan. There
get it.
must be context that we're
He's playing
missing.
with Taze.
There must be context that we're missing
Yeah.
for Dalfan. I don't know what it is, but it's just based on what we can see right here and what I remember, I would say probably PK on this one.
Yeah, like he had the best season.
Okay, so getting into 6v6. Ha! Season
Getting
6,
into hour 2.
5v5. Yeah, as we have already breached hour 2.
Yeah.
This one we might actually want to split up into two sections. Um,
How long? What are we at?
we're at an hour and 8 minutes, so yeah, we'll wind up splitting this one out into 2 episodes. Probably uh, we can record it all now, and then we'll just release them separately. So for those who are
Yeah.
watching,
Or if it ends under 3 hours, we'll just make him deal with it.
you're only gonna potentially get the first half of this, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, so season 6, 5v5, and oh look, we moved the top performers to the left this season. That's where it fucking should be.
Finally.
Yeah. So down from 8 teams back to 6 teams in 5v5 here. So I mean, without
the
question, right?
the the
Lucic at center.
forbidden move, the most controversial season probably ever had by a
Yep,
player,
yep,
but the results don't lie.
yep.
Lucic with an all-time great season
At
as
center.
maybe a result of tanking his draft stock.
Yep, completely agreed.
Yeah, but that aside, it's still an all-time season.
hmm No, I completely agree with you 100%
Was
there.
he playing
So
C or was Crab playing C?
I believe it was Lucic playing C. So I'm gonna give him the nod at C. I'm like 90% sure. I don't think Crab was a center yet at that point in time. But well, I mean, I can start going through the defensemen if you want to try to find YouTube videos of that, see if you can look it up at all and
I'm gonna
verify.
ask Crab right now.
Okay,
You keep going.
sounds good. Okay. So as far as that goes, we'll switch over to, I mean, wingers is likely gonna end up being the same thing here. I guess,
Hell
well, we
yeah.
can wait on wingers because if Crab is a center, then Crab is probably going to be the one to win center here,
Yeah.
and Lucic would take wing. So let's give it a second to do that. We'll go
Crab
through
says he
the.
thinks Lucic.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was pretty sure Lucic was the center on that team. Okay, so given that you're looking in terms of wingers at, it would be Big V at 51 points, myself at 62, and then Crab at 55 would be the
Yeah.
top three to consider there. Dick McButts at 55 was a center, so counting him, unfortunately he falls behind Lucic here on this season, but anyway,
You,
this is a
you,
this is a tough one in all honesty. Uh, because Crab, even though I was putting up more points, Crab had a better season in a number of metrics, but was also on a better team. So how much does that, how
yeah.
much does that
Better
play
team.
in?
A lot of assists. Big carry job by Dyal playing with Hesse for a lot of that season.
I'm gonna leave this one to you again between the two of them because again, it feels disingenuous for me to be the
Yeah.
one
So,
deciding on that.
uh, yeah. Crab says Lucic C, from what he remembers.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So, Lucic C pick easy, all time easy. Yeah, playing with that guy helps, especially helps Crab, and as you'll see, probably for a few more seasons, Crab wasn't quite this good yet. He kind of swings back to it, later on, around like season 11,
Hmm.
10, 11. So I'm thinking, I don't know, it's tough because again, this is like I probably found the game right around the time this season was being played, so I wouldn't have seen. I wasn't really aware of the LHL until I think after San Jose had won. Like I remember seeing San Jose on the sidebar of the Reddit when I first started getting on the,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
We probably had like a picture of their logo
yeah,
up or something for
yeah.
winning
That's
the
one of my
season.
first
So,
memories of the Reddit is
yep.
seeing San Jose. I mean, I would have seen it before probably, but that was like the first time I actually started going on it. Uh, gosh, another dial pick, second best points per game. Yeah, that is such a carry job. What a what a lackluster team you ended up on for the first
I mean,
5v5 season.
I drafted it, so I can't even.
Oh yeah, you're not really ended up on.
Yeah,
More built.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, still though, that's too many points to ignore.
Okay,
I th-
so
yep.
yeah, why do we even have a fucking winger column?
Yeah, it's the
That's the
dial
fucking.
category.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll roll with that then. Taking a look at defense, I think defense is really straightforward this season. Number one has to be Taser on lefty. I mean,
Big
51
V?
points is the
Oh, lefty.
most points from a defenseman on the season.
Lefty.
Big V played mostly, well, he was offense and defense. He kind of did both because there's,
I did it again.
there's the five slots on the ice this time, and it kind of varied depending on like Timu and Dildo and Notled being present. Like, because those are three forwards, right? Like pure forwards that you're working with. So the majority of the time, Big V's like probably going to be playing defense in that case. So, but Big V was usually, I believe, actually a right defenseman more
Yeah.
often than not.
He was
So,
shooting long. Big V used to just blast
oh
long
yeah,
shots.
he was a long shot bomber, that's for
Yeah.
sure. So I would give Tays usually is the sorry, one sec. Tays usually is the left defenseman player, so I think squaring him in place of lefty.
I don't remember ever seeing Taze on lefty.
Am I flipping that around?
Yeah, Taze was always on the right. I never saw Taze, but I mean, like, I don't know what he because
No. You're right.
Sammy's
You're
playing
right. You're right.
there.
You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. I
It's
completely,
backhand,
I
the
completely
king
flipped
of the
that. Yeah,
backhand, Sammy.
I
Yeah,
completely flipped that.
yeah, yeah. Taser's up
Okay,
right.
so that makes things a little more challenging. Um, but I think we can safely assume that Big V is more likely. Well, so Big V is more likely to be a defenseman this season, right? Given the
Yeah,
context, given the three other forwards he has on his team that all had like 19 games played or more, or 16 or whatever it was, right?
yeah.
So like here's Timu at 16, pure forward, Notled at 22, pure forward, Dildo at 19, pure forward, right? Taking a look at that, it's safe to assume Big V is probably a defenseman on this team. And
Oh,
because
I
we
would believe so.
know Leafs was usually a right D,
Oh yeah,
uh,
Big V probably played on the left.
Big V was probably on the left. So that's a pretty disgusting pairing right there, Big V and Taser. Um, then that brings us to goalie. So K-Bomb pretty much
Oh yeah.
blew most of the things out of the water this season, or most of the stats out of the water. You could give a shout out to PK, who had a better goals against average on another pretty solid team in Toronto, but had a noticeably worse save percentage. 6.5% is a very meaningful difference. K-Bomb was the one who ended up winning the award for best goalie that season. I think it's fitting to have K-Bomb here as the first team All Star goalie.
Yep. Yep, that's fair. Good old K bomb.
Okay, so that rounds out season 6.
Jumping up to probably the only if we're not weighing in playoffs season that you might not end up on the team
Good,
for.
good. We need to pick like not me every time.
Well, you shouldn't have had a great season every season.
I hate doing that though. I hate
Yeah, well.
fucking.
Yeah, I know we're kind of trying to highlight the good players of the seasons, and based on how we're doing this with positions,
Especially
uh,
because there are two seasons
we're
on
really
there
screwing guys.
where I feel like or you could argue maybe even three with Crab in season 6, where I'm kind of shafting other players by being on here by nature of
By being too good a player.
by well no
Well,
by nature of the position.
yeah,
I
by the fact that you couldn't take
don't like
face-offs.
that. I don't like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
easy. Just don't
yeah,
take face-offs.
and you're on the all-winger team.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can think of a few seasons you won't be on there. It's fine. It's fine.
Good, good. We need more of those.
This is probably the half we're entering where Dial. It's like we're nearing the end of Dial's reign. You'll see him sprinkled throughout it. Actually, no, that's not even true. You won MVP like 9 times.
We'll get there.
Yeah,
Um, so this season, Lucic at center. I mean, he got
yeah,
to
easy.
benefit from playing a lot of 5v4s that
Yeah.
season, but still, even with Leafs and Cap being as good
Who was
as
center
they were,
between Leafs and Cap?
that you're gonna have to check that one and go ahead and ask
Ah,
Cap if you
shit.
can while we're
Yeah.
doing this. But Lucic was a better player than the two of them at the time, and it's hard to really deny that. The team that Lucic was working with was nowhere near as well-rounded. They had a good goalie in PK, but beyond that, their defense and like pairing forwards were, let's just say, not great. Basically, Lucic left himself without a true bona fide second forward this season, and it really bit them in the ass to say the least. So they also didn't have a top defenseman either. It was basically Lucic and PK carrying that team. So
It's good stuff. No answer from Cap just yet. He's in a game.
that's fine. We can work on the other ones here while we do this. So
Yeah.
as far as goalie goes, this is a really tight battle between
Oh,
Delphin and
yeah,
PK here.
that's
So from the
yeah, that is
awards,
close.
actually, this is one of two times ever where a goalie won both statistical awards but did not get the best goalie award. So
Oh,
Dalf
look at that.
won both the save percentage and goals against average, but PK was the one who actually won the best goalie award. So if you want to include it for context, PK also would have benefited from playing in those 5v4s where it's unlikely that he got very many shots on or goals allowed at that point. So his save percentage was likely and goals against average is likely to have been inflated a little bit because of that. And you can see me on Dallas, but I wasn't on Dallas for almost the entire regular season. We had a really late trade deadline this season. It's actually Otto that was on there instead, and Dallas was barely a 500 team. LA was the same record effectively. Both teams were 11 and 9. So, and let's see, defensively, uh, LA was
Yeah,
giving up 7.7 shots against per game. Dallas was giving up 7.05. So Dallas was a better defensive team than LA was statistically, which makes sense, which is probably the deciding factor between choosing PK over Dalfan there, in that if you look at the defensemen that PK had to work with, it's very likely that PK was in a harder position to succeed than what Dalfan was.
yeah. What do you think then? You saw Dal firsthand, but PK was real good on a crappy team. You're just talking about how it was kind of the PK and Lucic show over in LA.
Yeah, I mean, PK had to do a tremendous amount to carry that team. So I can definitely see why PK is given the nod here for
Best
the
goalie.
yeah as the best goalie at the time. But
Duffed it 3 games out in net.
man, is that close.
Yeah, that is insane. That is like nearly identical.
If we take a look at the votes, it was actually Dalfan had 1 vote for best goalie, and PK had 7.
Wow. Makeup award from him not getting it in season 5,
So
as we just determined.
given that it was such an overwhelming majority that voted PK for that, given all the context, I think we can go with PK for this one again. Um,
It's so close.
it is
Like,
really close. I'm
looks like
gonna I'm gonna edge towards PK on this one and trust the majority vote at the time, such an overwhelming majority vote, that there was enough of a justification based on like the games played, the teams played against, the quality of the teams themselves, to actually
Alright.
give PK that award.
Oh, okay. But Delph is so good in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I know we're talking regular, but like it seems like Delph. I don't know. I'm not sure about this one. Gave the last one. I mean, I think PK deserved that last one where Delph won best D or best G, but it looked like PK
All right, make the case
after
to me
all.
then. Make the case to me.
Well, I know well, first of all, even though they're slightly better, he does have the better stats, Dalfan in both of them. PK definitely on the inferior team. Probably more difficult shots he was facing. But in my you because this is all hindsight here, and I have the benefit that the awards voters didn't see. And looking in those playoffs, Dalf puts up a 78.57 save percentage. PK he gets swept 61%. 17% worse than Dalf. And I feel like Dalf was probably better, as we could see he performed better. He literally did it like a week later, a week after these stats were set in stone. He continued on and brought his game to another level, which I assume he was sort of always playing at. Like I'm guessing that Dalfan was better. Just based on looking at this season and the playoffs and all. Sort of because these stats are so close.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would. A lot of the time, I'd be more willing to give the goalie on the worst team, more benefit of the doubt, especially PK, because I know how good PK is. But it just like this is an insane season, I think, for Dalf and playoffs and everything. Like I feel like he was probably this is like one of the best goalie seasons ever for Dalfan. I mean PK too, but this might be like Dalf at his best in net.
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, I agree. I agree. I'm not trying to like dispute that.
Yeah.
I have a hard time. I guess the big thing is I have a hard time putting the like playoff performance as part of it.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming in with that to
I'm
like
not
sort
trying.
of
I'm not trying to use those stats against PK. We
you're
are trying to determine.
reinforcing the point.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it looks like I feel like the stats aren't telling the full picture. The regular season stats aren't telling the full picture for Dalfan that the playoff stats help illustrate
Okay. All right.
of
All right.
how good he was.
I'll give you it. We'll go Dalfan for this
Yeah.
one. I'll give you it.
Yeah, sorry, PK.
Okay. Left and right defense for this season. Big V, I was able to just confirm, was a left defenseman. So
Okay.
that we can go ahead and put in there. And then Taser again on the right
Yep,
D.
easy pick. Taze.
Yeah, easy pick. Best defenseman on the season. So as far as winger goes, it's really going to just come down to whichever one was the center between Leafs and Cap. I would go out on a limb to say that it was probably Cap that was the winger and Leafs that was the center, just knowing what I know about them.
Cap says I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that's probably what it was. If I can, trying to
Cap
find.
says likely me.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
Oh God. But he doesn't. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, here we go. I found an Atlanta versus Winnipeg playoff game.
There
So
it is.
let's see.
Tell us.
Thank you to Bo for recording all of the playoff games first person and uploading them.
Oh hell yeah! No, that's awesome. By the way, if we're really picking, it's still Dyal Oriax as the winger pick here, because even though he had 3 fewer points,
I was terrible in the regular season. It was Leafs at center.
Yeah.
Just confirmed. Leafs at center. Okay, so Kapanen as the best winger. So Leafs kind of getting the shaft here, unfortunately. I still will always hate the fact that they didn't get most points because Lucic was able to exploit.
Are you now? Hold on here. Hold on here. Are you sure we're putting Kapanen as the all-star winger over Dyal Oriax, who then put him over 3
He
games
had a
of
better
playoffs?
season than I did. He had a
But
much
did
better
he?
season. He did.
Look at your goal participation, 88%. 35 goals. Oh, Dial. I don't know.
Look at the plus minus though.
Oh, look at who won the cup. And again, you don't want me using playoff stats, but look at the playoff stats. 3.27 points per game from Dial Oriax and 1.0 per. We know who the best. Like, do you think Cap? I mean, Cap. He'll probably be like, "Oh, you were gonna put me on there and you screwed me." But if also at the same time, if we put him over Dial, can you imagine what he would have to say about that?
It's not about what he would have to say about it. It's about making the right decision
He had more
and making the correct call.
The correct call is Dial, but we could pick Cap just to change things.
No, we shouldn't be doing things just to change it up. We should be picking it because it's the right answer. Come on, we need to do this properly.
Well, okay. Well, here's that Atlanta team, amazing team play, as you know, and I don't. I've only been told.
That was their strength. It was their team.
Yeah,
play.
I was in the RSL. Didn't know there was an LHL going on at the same time. Sorta. And Kapanen and Leafs, both 42 points, both doing well, both two-way guys. And the team's working here. It's just a good team. A historic collapse in the playoffs. The stuff of legend, honestly.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
That team getting dismantled by the 4th seed Winnipeg. So again, with all the things we know, and we know that Dial is better than Cap and Leafs. It just was on a lackluster team. I don't know.
There's a difference between in general being better and being better that season.
You're probably better on Dallas on your 2 games on Dallas.
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
Well, based on the playoff stats, I'm gonna go out on a limb and assume 3.25 points per game. Dial was pretty good on Dallas. It's fine. It's fine. If we're just saying regular season, nothing of what we know. not weighing in one
I
of the
think
all-time
I don't
playoff performances.
I don't think you can. Yeah, I think the playoffs has to be separate. One and two. I think
All right.
you're
Cap, he
trying
won most assists, best team play award.
you're trying to compare a team player versus a goal scorer, and
Yeah.
that's never an easy thing to do. And looking at something like saying, oh well, he had more assists or he had more goals is like, I mean, yeah, those are the roles that they fill. Like, it's not at all surprising that I had a way higher goal participation than Cap did because when I was on Philly for the whole season, I was the only goal scorer on that team, really, at all. Versus Cap, who had Tays, Fuzzy, and Leafs all around him. So there was a lot more sort of offense spread around amongst the four of them. So
Yeah. You know what, Cap, fair pick here. Great season by that team. I think we can
the one
let the
the one I
best
feel
players
closer
slide.
about is actually probably Lucic and Leafs because of just how much I hate that Lucic was able to bump up his stats that season
Yeah.
in the 5v4 games.
But to be fair, big carry job by Lucic going on over there. That is not a good crop of skaters.
Agreed.
Ugh.
Agreed.
Whereas Atlanta has maybe the best. They're at least the most balanced.
Yes, they
Worked
were the
out
most
for them until
balanced.
they rolled in against Crab in a Tree and Bo. Couldn't get past Nina.
Okay, so here's what we've got for season 8 or season 7, sorry. So we got Cap, Lucic, Big V, Tays, and Dalf.
Sounds good. Big V Tays again.
Yep. Although I think this
Probably
will be the
running
end
out
of
of
the
big
this will be
V
the,
picks.
the end of the Big V line here, unfortunately.
And
The
Cap
line of
probably.
succession. Yeah. Hey, Cap got his name up here. This is it's
All
pretty
star.
legit. Pretty legit.
Yeah.
First
Good
team All
stuff.
Star for a season. That's some big shit right there. Okay. So for this one,
Season 8.
I mean,
Dude, this thing's gonna have to be broken into 3 parts.
yeah, probably.
This is
I'm
awesome.
thinking we do the first 10, like
Yeah.
season 1 through, or we could do season 1 through 9 or season 1 through 10 and then
Okay.
break it out into the second half and do the second half for another time.
Yeah. Let's do
Um,
that then.
okay. So season 8, I I kind of think that Winger is pretty well spoken for.
Yeah. Very easy pick.
The only debate would be is if Matt was the winger for Chicago, because in the limited time that Matt played, he was noticeably above me in
Yeah,
terms
this
of
is an
skill.
all-time great season, like in 5v5. The only one that comes close to those auto seasons is
Yeah,
Matt in season 8 here.
yep.
But he only plays 11 games too. And he also couldn't score on Tony Flo and net for the period I played.
So
Cap could.
I'm pulling up some season 8
Footage.
videos here.
Goofage.
I'm trying to find out if Matt was indeed playing center or wing,
Probably
because
varied.
it probably did
And
to
he
an
probably
extent.
played some games on Winnipeg too. Like, who knows?
Okay,
Right? Like,
Matt was centering.
okay. For which team? Chicago?
Chicago, yeah, Matt was
Yeah,
centering for them.
he
I mean,
probably
I think
Chicago
Chicago's the
Winnipeg
only
too.
play. We can't really count Winnipeg. His time on Winnipeg was so like brief, and
Yeah.
he barely played any games for them. So, um, given that Matt's the center here, I assume that that's probably the case. And it looks like Cap was playing wing for him, and Crab was actually on defense for most of this. So good context for us for the other picks as well. But so Matt center, I think that goes without saying.
Yeah, well, unless you want to hurt him with the 11 games played that we kind of hurt the goalies with. But
Right, but at the same
God,
time,
that is an
like,
insane season.
yeah, and this is the trend that we went with Matt earlier too, with season 4 and 5. It's the same thing, right? Like he doesn't have the
Yeah.
same sample size of games, but it's still in all these cases, it's more than half the games, and he's been so incredibly dominant in that time that it's hard to justify not doing it. Plus, I think that goaltender is a much more volatile position in terms of like severe ups and downs in terms of stats than for a skater, because as a skater you can like play like ass and get 3 points in a game because you got
Yeah.
3 assists or something, or you were in the right
Are
place at the right
you
time.
talking about me yesterday in Friday Night Hockey? Because I feel exactly
Yes,
called
yeah,
out.
specifically. Yep, yep. Whereas a goalie, if you play like ass, you're gonna lose, or your
Yep.
stats are at least gonna be shitty. Like
Your
there's
stats are gonna be bad.
exactly, you can disguise shitty play better in a skater, I feel like, than you can in a goalie if you're just looking at statistical evaluations of it. So, um, so that's my argument for saying that the games played doesn't matter quite as much for a forward as it does for a goaltender. But yeah, I think you gotta tip the
Yeah.
cap here to Matt as
Uh, the
the number
final
one center.
great Matt season, regular season at least.
Yeah. Which okay, so now that we know Matt was on the wing, sorry Cap, but
Center.
your winger spot is mine.
Yeah. Tyler
Uh,
X leading the team or leading the league in scoring. 40 goals, just under 3 a game. Closest player to Matt. Second by a mile. DMB
correct.
2.5. DMB another good season here, but for only 14 games, and unlike Matt, didn't make the most of his uh, not perfect attendance.
So defensively, here's where things get kind of interesting because,
It's not interesting to me. I know my picks.
well,
I know.
okay, so I would say obviously Tays for right D, right, is the
Yeah.
big one.
And
Um,
left D. Oh.
okay, did he play lefty? Do
Yeah.
we
Oh
know?
yeah, he did.
Did
Yeah,
he?
because Johnny was on right, and Trev Crow.
Okay.
When Trev Crow's limited, but when Johnny played, Johnny was right and Jabba was left.
Okay. So, Mickey J,
Yeah,
Mick
Mick
Jabba.
Jabba, most assists, best team play award, most points by a defenseman, and this is the all-time best points per game a defenseman ever put up in 5v5.
It's also one of the best all-time assists per game that anybody put up in any
Yep.
5v5 season. It was
Oh, Mick
actually
Jabba.
he held the record for a little while for most assists per game, and that's Mick Jabba on Toronto.
Yeah.
So yeah, you gotta tip the
Yeah.
cap to Jabba, who
He didn't win best D, but he got a bunch of other awards
he's
and had
he's
an
had
all-time season.
Jabba's had a really up and down career playing in a lot of different positions, in a lot of different roles on teams, as backup, starter. He's been all over the place, and yeah, this was probably, you could argue, his best season or his most impactful season anyway, out of all the ones that he played. Leading all defensemen in points is no small feat, especially when you're competing with the right defenseman that we're choosing. And Taser here is arguably one of the best players of all time to play in the league and probably the best defenseman of all time. So
Yeah.
definitely, definitely got to give him the nod there and acknowledge the level of performance that he was able to put up. So, all right, so getting down to goalies. So the best goalie voted was actually K-Bomb this season.
Another one where he's third on the list.
Yes. So he did not have the best save percentage, did not have the best goals against average, but was voted the number one goalie on the season. And honestly, I don't think I agree with this.
You
I
don't?
no,
Okay.
I think I would pick Meatsail.
Yeah, rookie meets sale.
Yeah, I think I would
I
pick Meatsail. The goals
I
the goals against average obviously statistically performed better on the whole. He had a better season.
yeah, only one
They
fewer win.
Yeah, both teams were very similar in terms of record. Toronto was 12 and 8. Philadelphia was 13 and 7, so only one game separated them, and they actually had the same number of points on the season too, meaning the two teams, not the goalies. They both were at 37 points because of
Yeah.
OT wins and whatnot. So two very closely contested teams. And if you're looking at shots against, so this is probably why K-Bomb won it.
Yeah.
7.53 on Toronto versus 6.83 on Philly. And uh, Meatsell was able to play behind the more, well, probably one of the best defensive pairings to
Oh
ever
my
come through the
lord.
LHL
Yeah,
in
there
Zan
they
and
are.
Taser, and versus Johnny and
Well,
McJava.
well, as people may remember from a face-off a little while ago, Pete Sale is also on the team that has a noticeable defensive black hole on it. Who played 13 games? Who in 3 fewer games than Tays managed a 16 worse plus minus
True,
in Claude Giroux.
but so let's caveat that, right? he's also playing on one of the best defensive teams outside of that in Jalalu, Taze, and Zam. It's
Hey,
hard
by the way,
to.
imagine playing forward for Taze and Zam and you break even on plus minus.
I know, right? Not anything against you, Lalu.
No, because in season 9, Lalu without Clyde
Explodes.
was
Yep. Yep.
is the best player.
Yep.
He's about to win a fucking all-star pick
Oh
here.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, back to
So
this.
okay,
Back
all
to
right.
this game.
So look, okay. So now that we've gone through that, looked at the team stats, that does make me feel better about the
Yeah.
K-bomb pick here.
Oh yeah,
Initially,
you know what? And by the way, I always loved K. I was on. Well, I was sort on. I was technically on this Toronto team. I played a few games with them. With K Bomb there, 2 maybe, and I saw him on that fabled Florida team in season 10 for a couple games as well. And every time I saw K Bomb, and especially in Florida, and I feel like maybe it's a little bit of the same here. I felt like K Bomb always played better than what his stats indicated. Like he would blow me away, like the way that like no go, like Kiwi does it. Like Kiwi did it too, where he's making these crazy saves. K Bomb is the only other goalie I could think of, except maybe he's sort of on line with PK, where I was like, this guy is unbelievable. Like he is winning these games for us,
hmm
or at least keeping us in them. And I
hmm
feel like I remember that in season 8 Toronto from the very limited time I was actually there. Like I don't know, K Bomb was really good, and Meat Sale obviously is like a mind blowing goalie. He's one of the best ever, but I don't know that maybe maybe he was right away here.
So this was his first real season
Yeah,
as a goalie. I mean, this was sort of the like breakout year for him. Um, so man, this is a tough one because I started thinking more about PK too while you were saying that, and PK had a team that had was 7-13, so considerably worse than the two teams we're talking about. Gave up
yeah,
8.25 shots against per game, which is a whole 1.5 extra shots per game than what Meatsell had to face, and he still had a higher save percentage than both of them, and a only like marginally, not really that
yeah.
bad, worse goals against average.
I don't like his half of the games of the
Yes. Yep.
season. And I
Agreed.
don't like the 10 games in that.
Yep. That's what I was gonna say is like that's the only thing that I think prevents him from because if he had played more games and had a larger sample size, I think not only does that team perform better, but I think he actually might be the right choice for this given the
Yeah.
defense he played behind. But yeah, going back to the other two, I think it's K-bomb. I think it's K-bomb because
Yeah.
the goals against average. One thing I've kind of always thought is, which makes sense. The like playing behind a worse defense obviously is going to contribute to worse save percentage and worse goals against average. So there's always some level of handicap that you have to give by nature of that because of the difficulty it takes to perform that. And we saw
Hmm.
that in the Vezina voting this year, right, for the NHL, right? Like Tuukka Rask was the best statistical goalie in goals against average and in save percentage, but it was Hella Busick that ended up winning the award because the difference between the team in front of him and shitty Winnipeg versus mediocre Boston is a huge, huge differential there in terms of like the quality that he's dealing with. And as a result, just the sheer number of shots he's facing, the sheer number of quality scoring chances that the other team gets, like all that has to be, factored in. So I think, yeah, given all the context, I'll change my initial
Yeah. They're
disagreement
both
with
playing
this.
for an all-star defenseman, as
Yeah,
we've determined.
yep. Um,
One of them maybe a little better as a defenseman.
yeah, I think it's got to be K-bomb.
Yep.
Okay.
Meat Sale will
So
get his time probably right here.
this will probably be the last season we do
Yep.
for this split of this. We'll do seasons
How are
10
we pushing
through.
2 hours?
We're up to just about an hour 45, just about a minute and a
Okay,
half
so
short of
yeah,
that. So yeah,
yeah.
so we will do the next seasons 10 through 19. That'll be released probably next week. We'll try and maybe do these back to back. We'll release this one on what would it be Thursday, right?
We could release them on the same day, honestly.
Nah, let's keep it spread out. We gotta,
For this one?
we gotta milk it, make people wait for it.
I don't know. I agree with the two different videos, but I don't know about who wants to hear this one again. Like a week later.
I suppose that's fair. we could talk about it. Anyway,
Yeah,
point
we'll figure
is,
this out. You might get them both at once,
yeah,
but
you
we'll
might.
see.
We'll see. We'll see. Regardless, we're gonna split this video here after we do season 9. So,
Yep, that's a good idea.
just real quick to flip back over here so we could see the recap. So season 8 ended up being myself, Matt, Java, Taze, and K-Bomb.
That is the last time you will see McJabba on this list.
Yeah, it's
You will probably see. Yeah, that's the last time you'll see Matt and Jabba. K-Bomb might have another one left in him. We'll
yeah,
see.
maybe.
I think I could think of one.
Okay, so for season 9,
Speaking of last time you'll see a guy,
Lalu.
Center Lalu.
Yep.
An all-time season.
Yep. One of the best seasons by a forward in 5v5. He was fantastic.
And it's especially cool because you'll see, especially up to this point, Lalu's name not on the radar at any point.
And
this
after
dude
this,
leads
he
the
will
league
not be on the radar at any point.
Yeah, never played again
Yep.
until Friday Night Hockey. Until he brought HQM back. When he came to me and he said, "Tony, you got to get HQM going." I was like, "For you, anything." I think that's what happened. I don't remember exactly, but I'm gonna tell people. I'm gonna tell you, the people. That's what happened.
He is the reason season 20 is happening.
The only reason.
Yep, it is Jay Lalu.
Anyway, Jay Lalu playing center.
Yep, completely
Not
agreed.
too good at face-offs from his own mouth, but he was playing center.
Wing again.
Yep.
Pretty
the only guy close to Lalu. This one is like, the top two players are really far ahead of everybody else. Good thing you guys played different positions.
Yeah, so nobody's getting screwed this time around, thankfully.
Yeah.
It's only happened, what, twice now? Kind of, you can count Kreb, kind of. Just because there was a bit of a debate there. But it's really only so far that one Lucic season and the one, or was it Otto? Otto and DMB?
DMB,
yeah. Otto and DMB.
Otto got screwed and DMB got screwed.
Yep.
In two of the best seasons of all time, statistically.
Yep. Such are the flaws with systems like this, so.
Yep. No, they should have put up 6 points a game like Matt did.
As far as D-men goes, I mean,
is Taser play? Oh, here they are, left and right on the same team.
Yep.
That's the easiest pick in the world.
Yeah, this season is probably going to be the shortest one we have to do out of any of them.
Till 17.
Yeah, so
where the same thing happens.
Sam and Taze, same thing. I mean, they played on the same team together. If you notice, you have 3 All-Stars already on one roster. So unsurprising that Philadelphia ended up being the #1 team this season. It was also the first team to sweep the playoffs ever. They were phenomenal this time around. So as far as goalies go, you're really looking at Briz and Meetzel here for this one. So it was Meetzel that ended up winning best goalie. Briz had the better goals against average. Meetzel had the better save percentage. Gonna follow the same logic here. Big part of the reason why that's happening is you have both all-star defensemen in front of Briz. Briz is a phenomenal goalie, one of the better goalies to ever play the game. But that's also probably the easiest environment to play goalie ever, behind literally both all-star defensemen for that season, the MVP for the season in Lalu, the person who's
an amazing two-way player.
Yeah, exactly. So this one seems I don't want to say cut and dry, but it's.
Who was Meetzel? Didn't play the whole season on Dallas. What team was he on?
I don't know.
Who was our goalie on Dallas when that season started?
That's a good question. I don't know. Oh, wasn't it like Nina or Dalfan?
I don't know. No, because I think Dalf was maybe.
I think it was Dalfan. I think Dalfan because look at the stats. He played 3 games in net, and I'm pretty sure that was at the start of the season before he realized that he needed to not play net and needed to play
save
defense.
Though.
Oh, I know.
Oh man, he should have kept playing goalie.
Well, I mean, if Meetzel is available,
I guess it's fine. Still
10%
better.
I was on that team and I got traded.
Hey, me too. Me too. Same trade.
I got traded for Lucic and Leafs. I think it was you.
You and I got traded for Lucic and Leafs.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So
there was a 2-for-2 trade.
And that was with that ended up being with like Pittsburgh or so. I don't know. Like
Yep. Yeah, we went to Pittsburgh. You played one game there. Then you
then I
requested
got
off of there.
traded. I didn't even request. He
No,
traded
I just used to
me.
tell you that. I used to say, remember you requested my trade off Dallas and you got thrown in with me?
He traded me and Ev Cobb for like Otto and Dick Dug or something. I
I
don't
don't
remember
know.
exactly what
No,
it
Dick Dug
was.
was on Dallas. He was on Dallas, but remember he couldn't show up a lot?
It's hard to remember now. It's all a blur because I got traded twice that
I
season,
only played a
which
handful of games on
was
Dallas,
weird.
so I don't even know. I
Yeah.
was splitting time with Doucette and Self Plug.
Anyway,
Good
so
stuff.
I think Meat Sales is probably the play here. Again, not to discredit Briz at all, but the environment he's playing in is way better suited to looking good as a goalie than what Meat Sale was sort of dealing with.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so given that we're about an hour and 50 minutes in, so we're going to cut this off here. This is already one of our longest ones outside of the first one that we did, which was like fucking 3.5 hours or whatever.
Yep.
So we'll cut this one off here. I have no idea when we will release the second part. At most, it will be the following episode after this one is released. Uh, and the shortest amount of time might be the same night. We might do a two-parter just in the same day. So we'll see. But look out for the second half of this.
Yeah.
It'll be more of the same. I'll give you guys a quick TLDR here at the end for those who don't want to listen to all the justification for all of it. So for season 1, we have Nando, Otto, Tim, and Big V. Season 2, we have myself, Otto, Tim, and Sammy. Season 3, we have myself, DMB, Taser, and Briz. Season 4, we have myself, Matt, Leafs, and K-Bomb. Season 5, rounding out 4v4, we have myself, Matt, Taze, and PK. Moving into the start of 5v5 with Season 6, we had myself, Lucic, Big V, Taze, and K-Bomb. Then Season 7, we had Kapanen, Lucic, Big V, Taze, and Dalfan. Season 8, we had myself, Matt, McJabba, Taze, and K-Bomb. And then Season 9, we had myself, Lalu, Zam, Taze, and Meatsail. So
Yep.
that rounds up all of the sort of first half of the LHL roughly.
It's about to get good.
Around there. Yeah. Well, it'll be a little bit more relatable now because once we get to about season 10, this is
No, I meant the
where.
league. I meant the skill in the
Okay, well,
league.
yes, that is true. But also, season 10 is where a lot of the people who play now showed up. A lot of the guys
Yeah.
like, Guy, BG, some of the names that you're more familiar with now that are still sticking around and playing the game.
The
This
people
is
who would
really
listen
where.
to this.
Exactly. This is really where a lot of you guys start to come into play. So it'll be fun to go through that for sure. So with
A
that,
lot of goose love this half.
yes, there will be. Well deserved. So on that note, we'll call it here, and we
Yep.
will see you guys on the next one.
Yep. See you soon.